December 17th, 1944. Outside Bastogne, Belgium. The fog sits thick across the Ardennes forest, clinging to the frozen pines like wet wool. Obergefreiter Klaus Richter crouches behind a shattered stone wall, his breath forming clouds in the bitter morning air. His fingers, stiff inside worn leather gloves, grip the cold steel of his Car 98K. Somewhere through the mist, American voices are shouting, panicked, desperate. The sound of diesel engines coughs and sputters, then falls silent. "Forward!" Hauptmann Weber's voice cuts through the gray morning. "Secure that convoy." Richter rises, his joints protesting, and moves with his squad through the skeletal remains of what was once a farmhouse. The Wehrmacht's surprise offensive has caught the Americans off guard, and now, scattered across the mud-slicked road ahead, sits the prize. A supply convoy, abandoned in chaos. 3 trucks, their olive-drab paint dull against the white snow beginning to fall. The ambush happened fast. A Panzerschreck round had disabled the lead vehicle, and the American drivers had scattered into the woods rather than make a stand. Smart men, living men. Now their trucks belong to the Reich. Richter approaches the middle vehicle carefully, his rifle raised, scanning for stragglers. But there's nothing. Just the ticking of cooling engines and the whisper of wind through bare branches. He lowers his weapon and really looks at the truck for the first time. It's massive, bigger than anything in the German motor pool, squatting on 6 enormous wheels like some industrial beast. GMC reads the chrome letters on the hood, partially obscured by mud. Richter has seen these trucks before, from a distance, always moving, always carrying supplies to the inexhaustible American war machine. But he's never been this close to one. Beautiful, isn't she? The voice belongs to Feldwebel Otto Becker, a mechanic pulled from a panzer repair unit and pressed into infantry service when the tanks ran out of fuel. He's already circling the truck like a buyer at a horse market, his experienced eye taking in every detail. The Americans call it a CCKW, 2.5-ton capacity, 6-wheel drive. He runs a grimy hand along the cab. "We've been trying to knock these bastards out for months. They just keep coming." Hauptmann Weber strides up, his officer's cap dusted with snow. "Can we use them?" "Use them." Becker laughs, a short, bitter sound. "Herr Hauptmann, these trucks are worth more than gold right now. Our supply lines are stretched to breaking. Half our vehicles are immobilized for lack of parts or fuel. If we can get these running." He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. "Then get them running, Feldwebel. We move in 2 hours." Becker commandeers 3 men, including Richter, and they set to work. The first task is simple. See if the trucks will start. The keys, conveniently, are still in the ignitions, another American habit that German soldiers have learned to appreciate. The Americans don't bother removing keys during combat evacuations. Why would they? There are always more trucks. Richter climbs into the driver's seat of the middle truck, and immediately he notices something strange. The interior is simple, Spartan even. There's nothing here but the essentials. A steering wheel, a few gauges, pedals, a gear shift. No unnecessary decoration, no elaborate controls. Even the seat is just a bare metal frame with a thin cushion. He turns the key. The engine turns over on the first try. It rumbles to life with a deep, confident growl that sends vibrations through the whole chassis. Richter's eyes widen. He's driven German trucks that required 10 minutes of coaxing in weather like this. Careful throttle work, precise timing, prayers to mechanical gods. This American truck starts like it's a spring morning. "Mein Gott," breathes Gefreiter Hans Wolf, standing by the hood. "It just started." Becker is already crawling underneath the chassis, his experienced mechanic's instincts taking over. What he sees makes him pause. He slides out from under the truck, his face thoughtful. "Richter, shut it off. I need to look at something." The sudden silence feels loud. Snow continues to fall, beginning to accumulate on the truck's broad hood. "What is it?" Richter asks, climbing down from the cab. Becker doesn't answer immediately. He's staring at the engine, and there's something in his expression that Richter can't quite read. Not admiration, exactly. Something closer to unease. "Open the hood," Becker says quietly. It takes Richter a moment to find the latch. It's simpler than the German equivalents, just a single lever. The hood swings open with a metallic groan, revealing the truck's mechanical heart. What Becker sees makes his blood run cold, though not for the reasons one might expect. The engine isn't a masterpiece of precision engineering. It's not a marvel of German craftsmanship with perfectly machined components fitted to tolerances measured in hundredths of millimeters. It's crude, simple, almost insultingly basic. And that's what terrifies him. "Look at this," Becker says, pointing to the engine block. His breath forms clouds in the freezing air. "This casting, you see these marks, these imperfections? In a German factory, this would be rejected, sent back for refinement." Richter peers closer. He's no mechanic, but even he can see what Becker means. The metal surfaces are rough, the castings show visible mold lines, the overall finish is functional, nothing more. "So it's inferior?" Wolf suggests hopefully. "No," Becker's voice is flat. "That's the problem. It's not inferior. It's different." He reaches into the engine compartment, his hands tracing the various components. "Every part here, every single piece, is designed to be simple. Look at these bolts, all standard sizes. I could service this entire engine with maybe 6 tools." 6? Do you know how many specialized tools we need for an Opel Blitz? Richter doesn't know. He's infantry, not a mechanic. 23, Becker continues, his voice taking on a strange intensity. 23 different tools, and that's assuming nothing is badly damaged. And half of those tools, you can't just find them. They have to be ordered from the factory. Assuming the factory still exists, assuming the rail lines aren't bombed, assuming. He straightens up, wiping grease on his already filthy uniform. This truck? This American truck? A conscript with basic training could maintain it. A farmer who's never seen an engine before could learn to repair it in a week. They've designed it for an army of amateurs. That's an insult, isn't it? Wolf says. They think so little of their soldiers' intelligence that they make everything simple. Becker turns to look at him, and there's something haunted in his eyes. "No, Gefreiter. It's brilliant. It's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. And it means we've lost." The words hang in the cold air like an accusation. Richter feels something twist in his stomach. "Feldwebel, you can't say things like that. If the Hauptmann hears, the Hauptmann knows." Becker's voice is bitter. "Every officer who's fought on the Western Front knows. We just don't talk about it." He turns back to the truck, resting his hand on the cold metal. "You want to know what this truck represents? It's not engineering. It's industrial philosophy. The Americans have built an army that doesn't need expertise. It needs numbers. They've reduced warfare to mathematics." He begins pointing to different components, his lecture gaining momentum. "Look at this fuel pump. Simple diaphragm design. Nothing sophisticated. If it breaks, you don't repair it. You replace it. 2 bolts, 5 minutes, done. The carburetor? Basic Venturi design that any village mechanic would recognize. The transmission? 4-speed, no synchros, built like a tractor. Crude by our standards, but you could drive this truck through a river and it would keep running." Richter is beginning to understand, and with understanding comes a creeping dread. "Our trucks," Becker continues, "are beautiful, precisely engineered German trucks. They're made for peacetime roads and skilled mechanics. They're made for a world where you can get parts, where you have proper tools, where you can take the time to do things correctly. They're made for a world that doesn't exist anymore." He slams the hood shut, the bang echoing across the frozen landscape. "This truck is made for war, real war. The kind where nothing works perfectly, where half your mechanics are dead, where you're repairing things in a muddy field at midnight, with shells landing a kilometer away. The Americans understood something we didn't. In war, good enough is better than perfect, because good enough can be everywhere, and perfect can only be in a few places." Over the next hour, while the rest of the company prepares to move, Becker conducts what amounts to an autopsy on the captured trucks. Richter and Wolf assist, though they're not entirely sure what they're assisting with. It feels less like preparation for military use and more like research, as if Becker is trying to understand something fundamental about the enemy. In the back of the truck, they find the manifest. It's a standard American military form, water-stained but still legible. Becker studies it with the intensity of a scholar examining an ancient text. "Produced August 1944, he reads aloud. GMC plant, Pontiac, Michigan. Serial number 147,923 of the current production run. He looks up, his face pale. Did you hear that? Serial number 147,923 of the current production run. This single model from this single factory in just over 3 years. He doesn't finish the calculation. He doesn't need to. Richter can do basic mathematics. That's impossible, Wolf says. One factory can't produce that many trucks. The paperwork must be wrong. It's not wrong. Becker's voice is hollow. We captured intelligence reports last month. The Americans are producing over 800,000 trucks per year, total, all types. But just this model, the CCKW, they've made over 500,000 of them. 500,000 of these trucks, each one capable of carrying 2.5 tons of supplies, each one designed to run for 100,000 kilometers with minimal maintenance. Richter tries to comprehend the number and fails. 500,000. In Germany, truck production for all of 1943 was barely 80,000 vehicles, and most of those were requisitioned civilian models, not purpose-built military vehicles. It's more than that, Becker continues, pulling out a pack of cigarettes with shaking hands. He lights one, the small flame bright in the gray morning. It's not just trucks. Everything they make follows this same philosophy. Their rifles, the M1 Garand, simple, reliable, semi-automatic. Ours is a bolt-action design from the last war. Their half-tracks, their jeeps, their tanks, everything designed for mass production and easy maintenance. They've industrialized warfare itself. But our equipment is better, Wolf insists. There's desperation in his voice now. A Tiger tank can destroy 10 Shermans. Our MG-42 is the finest machine gun ever made. Our soldiers are better trained, more experienced. None of it matters. Becker takes a long drag on his cigarette. That Tiger tank that can destroy 10 Shermans, they'll send 15. And when we destroy those 15, they'll send 20 more. And when our Tiger breaks down, because they always break down, they're too complex not to, there won't be parts to fix it. But they're Shermans, simple, reliable, and most importantly, replaceable. They don't need to build the best tank. They just need to build enough tanks. He gestures toward the trucks with his cigarette. This is what defeat looks like, gentlemen. Not a weapon, not a tank or a plane or a super soldier. This, a simple truck, mass-produced by the hundreds of thousands, driven by farm boys who learned to operate it in 2 weeks. This is the weapon that will destroy the 1,000-year Reich. By midday, they have all 3 trucks running. The ease of it is almost insulting. In a German unit, getting 3 broken-down vehicles operational would take days. Here, it took hours, and most of that was just figuring out where the Americans stored their tools. The tools themselves are another revelation. Becker finds them in a compartment behind the cab, a canvas roll containing perhaps a dozen tools, all of common sizes, all designed to fit the standard fasteners used throughout the truck. There's even a manual, a small, water-resistant booklet with simple diagrams and instructions. Becker flips through it, his expression growing more disturbed with each page. They've written instructions for idiots, he mutters. Step 1, locate the fuel filter. Step 2, disconnect the fuel line. Step 3. He trails off, then laughs bitterly. It's perfect. Any fool can follow this. Any fool can keep these trucks running. Hauptmann Weber returns as they're finishing. He surveys the 3 operational trucks with satisfaction. Good work, Feldwebel. We'll use them to transport ammunition to the front line. The offensive is behind schedule, and we need— Herr Hauptmann, Becker interrupts, something that would normally earn him a reprimand. Have you seen the American supply convoys? The ones moving up behind their lines? Weber's expression darkens. I've seen them. They don't stop, Becker continues. All day, all night, trucks like these moving supplies forward. Ammunition, fuel, food, medical supplies, everything an army needs delivered fresh every day. Do you know what our supply situation is? Feldwebel, this isn't the time. We have 3 days of ammunition, Becker says flatly. Maybe 4 if we're careful. The fuel situation is worse. Half our panzers are immobilized not from battle damage, but from empty tanks. The Luftwaffe can barely fly. And why? Because our supply lines are stretched across half of Europe, dependent on trains that get bombed every night and trucks that break down constantly. because they were never designed for this kind of use. Weber is silent for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is quiet. What's your point, Feldwebel? My point, Herr Hauptmann, is that we're not fighting an army. We're fighting a logistics system. The Americans aren't better soldiers, no offense to them. But man for man, our infantry is superior. Their tanks aren't better. Our Panthers and Tigers are far more powerful. But it doesn't matter. They can replace everything they lose faster than we can destroy it. And we can't replace anything. Becker gestures to the trucks. These represent something we can't compete with. Not industrial capacity. That's just numbers. They represent a different way of thinking about war. They've accepted that most of their soldiers will be poorly trained conscripts, so they've designed equipment that conscripts can use. They've accepted that things will break, so they've designed things that can be fixed quickly or replaced cheaply. They've accepted that war is messy and chaotic, so they've built a system that works even in chaos. And us? Weber asks softly. We built an army for a short war, for lightning campaigns where quality matters more than quantity, for a world where we would win quickly, decisively before logistics became a factor. Becker's cigarette has burned down to his fingers. He drops it in the snow where it hisses out. But this isn't that war anymore. This is a war of attrition, and in a war of attrition, the side with more trucks wins. That night, they use the captured trucks to move ammunition forward. Richter drives one, hunched over the large steering wheel, navigating by the dim blackout lights. The truck handles beautifully, even on the icy roads. It's heavy, stable, and the four-wheel drive seems to grip surfaces that would leave a German truck spinning helplessly. They're moving toward the sound of artillery, toward the front lines where the offensive is supposedly succeeding. But as they drive through the darkness, Richter sees things that make Becker's words echo in his mind. They pass a column of German trucks pulled to the side of the road, broken down, their crews working frantically by the light of shaded lanterns to make repairs. They pass horse-drawn wagons. Horses. In 1944, in the age of mechanized warfare, the Wehrmacht still moves half its supplies by horse. The animals struggle through the snow, their breath steaming, their ribs showing through mangy coats. And then, as they crest a hill, Richter sees something that stops his breath. On the other side of the valley, perhaps 3 kilometers away, is an American supply convoy. It's moving at night, headlights blazing, completely unconcerned about air attack. Why would they be concerned? The Luftwaffe barely exists anymore. The convoy stretches as far as Richter can see in the darkness, a river of light flowing steadily northward toward the American lines. Trucks just like the one he's driving, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, each one carrying supplies to the front. Mein Gott, Wolf whispers from the passenger seat. They're not even hiding. Richter pulls to a stop, unable to tear his eyes away. He watches the convoy for 10 minutes, 15, 20. It doesn't end. Truck after truck after truck, rolling through the night with the inexorability of a glacier. Each one identical to the next, each one carrying ammunition or fuel or food to the American soldiers who will use those supplies to push deeper into the Reich. Behind them, Becker has also stopped. He climbs down from his truck and walks over to where Richter is parked. Together, they watch the distant lights. My father fought in the Great War, Becker says quietly. He told me about the American convoys then, too. Said they blotted out the horizon. Said you could hear the trucks for hours before you saw them. Just this endless rumble like distant thunder. He said that's when he knew Germany would lose, not because of any battle, just because of the trucks. History repeating itself, Richter murmurs. No. Becker's voice is hard. This is worse. In the Great War, it took them years to mobilize their industry. This time, they were ready. This time, they've perfected it. Do you know what the Americans call this? Their industrial system? Fordism. Named after Henry Ford, the man who invented the assembly line. The same techniques they used to mass-produce automobiles for civilians, they've applied to war. They've industrialized killing the way they industrialized everything else. A cold wind blows across the hilltop, carrying with it the distant rumble of artillery. The American convoy continues its steady progress through the night, indifferent to the weather, to the war, to everything except the mechanical necessity of moving supplies forward. We could call in artillery, Wolf suggests, Try to hit them. With what shells? Becker asks. The ones we're currently delivering, which represent 2 days of production for Germany? The Americans would lose a dozen trucks and replace them by morning. They'd lose 100 trucks and replace them by the end of the week. You can't win against that. It's not an army. It's a force of nature. They complete their supply run and return to find chaos. The offensive is stalling. The initial surprise has worn off, and now the Americans are counterattacking with their usual formula: overwhelming firepower, unlimited supplies, and aggressive use of armor. Reports filter back of German positions being overrun, not by superior tactics, but by simple, brutal force. The Americans just keep coming, and they never run out of ammunition. Richter's company is pulled back to a defensive position outside a small village. They dig in, prepare for the counterattack everyone knows is coming. And while they wait, Becker continues his obsessive study of the captured trucks. He's taken apart the engine of one of them, laying the components out on a canvas tarp like a surgeon performing an autopsy. Other soldiers gather around, curious despite themselves. In the strange limbo of anticipating battle, anything is a distraction. Look at this crankshaft, Becker says, holding up the heavy piece of steel. In Germany, this would be forged, heat-treated, machined to precise tolerances. It would take skilled workers hours to produce. This one? Cast steel, rough machined, probably took 15 minutes to make. And you know what? It works just as well. It might not last quite as long, but it doesn't need to. Because when it does wear out, there are 1,000 more waiting to replace it. Gefreiter Schmidt, a young soldier who looks barely old enough to shave, asks the question everyone is thinking. So what do we do? How do we fight against this? Becker is quiet for a long time. He sets down the crankshaft and lights another cigarette. His hands are still covered in grease from the engine work. We don't, he finally says. That's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. We can't fight against this. We never could. The moment the Americans entered the war, the moment their factories turned to military production, we lost. Everything since then has just been momentum. The machinery of war grinding forward until it reaches its inevitable conclusion. That's defeatist talk, Hauptmann-Faber says sharply. He's been standing at the edge of the group, listening. That's the kind of talk that gets men shot. Is it defeatist if it's true? Becker asks. There's no challenge in his voice, just exhaustion. Herr Hauptmann, I'm a mechanic. I deal with facts. The fact is that simple American truck we captured is more sophisticated than anything we've built, but not in the way we understand sophistication. We think sophistication means complexity, precision, perfection. They've understood that sophistication means designing for reality, for war, for a world where nothing goes according to plan. He gestures at the engine components spread before him. Every one of these parts teaches the same lesson. Build it simple. Build it robust. Build it replaceable. Build 10,000 of them. These aren't principles of engineering. They're principles of industrial warfare. And we never learned them. We were too proud, too convinced that German quality would triumph over American quantity. Quality does matter, Weber insists, but there's something hollow in his voice now. Of course it matters, Becker agrees, but only up to a point. Our MG-42 is better than their Browning machine gun, but they have 5 machine guns for every one of ours. Our Tiger tanks are better than their Shermans, but they have 10 Shermans for every Tiger, and when the Tiger breaks down, which it will because it's too complex not to, there are no spare parts. The Sherman breaks down. They replace it. Same day, sometimes same hour. He takes a long drag on his cigarette. I've been thinking about this war, about how we could have won. And I keep coming back to the same conclusion. We couldn't have. Not after 1941, not after the Americans entered, because they are not fighting with an army. They are fighting with an economy. And you can't defeat an economy on the battlefield. You can only compete with it in the factories. And in the factories, we've already lost. Christmas comes, but there's no celebration. The American counteroffensive has begun in earnest, and the German lines are crumbling. Richter's company is in constant retreat, falling back through the snow, abandoning equipment they can't move, and destroying what they can't abandon. The 3 captured American trucks have become invaluable. While German vehicles break down and are left behind, the GMC trucks keep running. They've been loaded, unloaded, driven through mud and snow and artillery barrages, and they simply refuse to quit. It's almost insulting how reliable they are. One evening, during a brief pause in the retreat, Becker does some calculations. He uses a stub of pencil in the back of a supply form, working the numbers while artillery rumbles in the distance. "Want to hear something terrible?" he asks Richter. "They're sharing a cigarette. Tobacco is scarce and they're rationing what they have." Is there anything good to hear anymore? The Americans produced 300,000 trucks this year. Let's say each truck can carry 2 tons of supplies. That's 600,000 tons of carrying capacity added in just 1 year. Now, assume each truck makes 1 trip per day, traveling an average of 100 kilometers. That's 30 million ton-kilometers of supply capacity per day, just from 1 year's production. Richter doesn't understand the numbers. They're too big, too abstract. Becker sees his confusion and tries again. Think of it this way. A single infantry division needs about 700 tons of supplies per day to remain combat effective. That's ammunition, fuel, food, medical supplies, everything. With just this year's truck production, the Americans can supply over 400 divisions. They don't have 400 divisions. They have about 90 divisions total in all theaters, which means they have more than 4 times the logistics capacity they need. So they're wasteful, Richter suggests. No, they're resilient. When we destroy their trucks, and we do constantly, it doesn't matter. They have excess capacity. They can lose half their trucks and still maintain supply. But us? We're operating at maximum efficiency, which means we have no margin for error. Any loss is catastrophic. Every destroyed truck, every damaged engine, every broken down vehicle brings us closer to collapse. Becker looks at his calculations, then crumples the paper. The Americans have built redundancy into their entire military system. They've accepted that war is wasteful and unpredictable, so they've overbuilt everything. Excess trucks, excess supplies, excess production capacity. It's inefficient by peacetime standards, but in war, that excess capacity is the difference between victory and defeat. We should have built more trucks, Richter says simply. It's not that simple. We couldn't have built more trucks, not like theirs. Our entire industrial philosophy is different. We build things to last, to be repaired, to be precise. They build things to be abundant, to be simple, to be replaceable. Both philosophies work fine in peacetime, but in total war, only theirs works. Richter is quiet for a moment, watching the snow fall. Then he asks the question that's been haunting him since they captured that first truck. Did we ever have a chance? Even at the beginning, even when we were winning, did we ever really have a chance? Becker doesn't answer immediately. He stares out at the darkness, at the glow of fires on the horizon where another German supply depot is burning. "No," he finally says, "I don't think so." Not once the Americans entered the war. Maybe if we'd never started it in the first place, but once we did, once we committed to total war against an opponent with unlimited industrial capacity, no, we never had a chance. We just didn't know it yet. January 1945 comes with brutal cold and the certainty of defeat. The Ardennes offensive has failed completely, consuming the last reserves of fuel and ammunition that Germany couldn't afford to lose. The front lines are collapsing everywhere. The Red Army is advancing from the east, the Western Allies from the west, and there's nothing left to stop them. Richter's company has been reduced to less than half strength. They've abandoned everything that wasn't essential, traveling light, moving fast, trying to stay ahead of the American advance. But it's a losing game. Every day brings them closer to the inevitable. The 3 American trucks are still with them. They've become mascots of a sort, symbols of a bitter truth that no one wants to speak aloud. While German vehicles have been abandoned by the dozens, these simple American trucks just keep running. On a frozen morning in late January, they're finally overtaken. Not by a dramatic battle, but by simple exhaustion. The company finds itself surrounded on 3 sides, with only one route of escape. Hauptmann Weber makes the decision quickly. They'll surrender. "Destroy the trucks," he orders. "Don't leave anything useful for them." But Becker refuses. "No," he says simply. "That's an order, Feldwebel." "I know, Herr Hauptmann, and I'm refusing it." Becker stands beside one of the GMC trucks, his hand resting on the cold metal. "These trucks need to survive, not for the Americans. They have plenty, for us, for after." "After?" Weber's laugh is bitter. "There is no after, Feldwebel. Germany is finished." "Exactly." Becker's voice is intense, urgent. "Which means we need to learn from this. These trucks, this industrial philosophy they represent, we need to understand it. We need to remember it. Because when Germany rebuilds, and it will rebuild eventually, we can't make the same mistakes. We can't prioritize perfection over practicality. We can't build things that only work under ideal conditions. We need to learn what these trucks have taught us." He looks around at the assembled soldiers, at the ragged remnants of what was once a proud Wehrmacht company. "I've spent 3 months studying these trucks. 3 months understanding why they work, why they're better than ours, even though they're simpler. And the lesson is clear. In the modern world, you can't just build quality. You need quantity, you need simplicity, you need systems that work even when everything goes wrong." Weber is quiet for a long moment. Then he nods slowly. "Leave the trucks intact. Surrender with them." The war ends 4 months later. Richter survives barely. So does Becker. They find themselves in a prisoner of war camp in France, part of the millions of German soldiers waiting to see what becomes of their defeated nation. Becker continues to study, to learn. He talks to American mechanics, asks questions about their trucks, their industrial processes, their way of thinking about mass production. The Americans, generous in victory, are happy to teach. They don't see it as giving away secrets. To them, it's just common sense, the obvious way to do things. In 1947, Becker is released and returns to Germany. The country is devastated, divided, occupied. But already, there are plans for reconstruction. And Becker carries with him the lessons learned from a simple American truck. He finds work with a small automotive company, one of the many German firms trying to rebuild from the ruins. He brings his understanding of mass production, of simplicity, of designing for reliability rather than perfection. The ideas take root slowly, but they take root. Other engineers, other mechanics, others who served in the war and saw firsthand the power of American industrial methods, they bring the same lessons. Slowly, quietly, German industry begins to change. The obsession with perfect engineering remains, but it's tempered now with an understanding of practical necessity. They learn to standardize. They learn that sometimes good enough is better than perfect. They learn that reliability matters more than complexity. They learn the lessons that simple truck taught, though it cost them everything to learn it. Richter and Becker meet again in 1956 at the opening of a new truck factory outside Munich. The factory uses assembly line methods, standardized parts, simple designs meant for easy maintenance. It's a far cry from the old ways, from the pre-war obsession with craftsmanship over efficiency. "We should have learned this before the war," Richter says quietly, watching the assembly line roll past. "We couldn't have," Becker replies. "Some lessons can only be learned through defeat. The Americans understood mass production because they'd been doing it for decades. They applied it to war because they already knew how. We had to learn it the hard way." He pauses, watching a worker install an engine with quick, efficient movements. "That American truck we captured, I still think about it sometimes. About how angry I was when I first saw it, how insulted I felt by its simplicity. I thought it was evidence of American inferiority, that they couldn't build anything sophisticated, so they built everything simple instead. I was wrong. The simplicity was the sophistication. I just couldn't see it." "And now?" Richter asks. "Now we build trucks that would make those American engineers proud. Not copies. We've added our own improvements, our own innovations. But the fundamental philosophy is the same. Simple, reliable, maintainable, producible." Becker smiles, but there's sadness in it. "We won the peace by learning from our defeat. Sometimes I wonder if that was the Americans' real victory. Not just beating us on the battlefield, but teaching us how to build a better Germany. They killed the Reich with trucks and then rebuilt Germany with the same lesson." The factory whistle blows, signaling the end of a shift. Workers stream out, heading home to families, to lives rebuilt from ruins. The assembly line continues its steady progress, producing trucks that will serve the new Germany. Simple trucks, reliable trucks, trucks that work. Somewhere in America, similar trucks are rolling off similar assembly lines. The Cold War is beginning, and once again, industrial capacity will matter as much as military might. But this time, Germany understands. They've learned the lesson, paid for it in blood and defeat in the ashes of cities. Quality has its place, but quantity has a quality all its own. And in a world shaped by mass production, abundance trumps perfection every time. It's a hard lesson, a bitter lesson, but it's one that rebuilt a nation. The simple American truck taught it. A generation of German engineers learned it, and the world changed because of it.